so I'm happy to be here to lead this discussion. You know, sometimes the road to political victory is long and winding, and sometimes the road is so long that we often don't think we can get there from where we are. But that road often involves significant input in terms of external pressure that's placed on government to move in a particular direction. Essentially what I'm talking about is agenda setting. And as I teach to my students, the agenda setting process is like a coin with two sides. On the one hand, on one side of the coin, there are efforts that are necessary to raise to the attention of policymakers those issues that they should be considering. The other side of that coin, though, and this is one that is often overlooked, is depending on your position on a particular issue, agenda setting is also about keeping harmful items off the agenda. Those issues that will do harm to your own political agenda. So we want to talk today about influencing Congress and how best to do that. We have put together a wonderful hybrid panel, and down, excuse me for a second, down on the far end, on the far right of the stage, is Nate Bennett Fleming. He is sitting next to Gregory Moore, who is sitting next to Jesselyn McCurdy, who sits next to Eleanor Hart. I'm sorry, Ann. We met earlier. I should know better. I apologize. Amy Ochetti, and also Josh Birch. So here's the question. You know, what we are talking about here, and I alluded to this somewhat earlier with regard to the long and winding road, is that there have been numerous bills that have been ultimately signed into law that took years and years and years to pass. Johnny mentioned some of those. I'm thinking also about the so-called Powell Amendment, Title VI to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits the distribution of federal funds to discriminatory segregated operations. And so I just want to start with Greg first, and then we'll move it around a little bit. Take us through some examples that you can come to that discuss or explain or exemplify the sort of time that's necessary to get some bill into law, and how it is necessary to overcome, or what is necessary rather to overcome some of these long-standing challenges.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Farnworth. Thank you, all of you, for staying in this session. It was a very interesting session we just had, and it actually helped remind me of some of the struggles that we've gone through. I've worn a lot of hats in the last 20 years. I've been Chief of Staff of Congressman John Conyers, worked with Keenan. I've still worked with Wade Henderson with the Leadership Conference, Executive Director of the NAACP Voter Fund for 10 years, and worked as a voting rights activist for about 25 years. The work I've done primarily that probably gives the best example would be the work on what we now know as the motor voter bill. At one time was actually two coalitions, and I want to give this example as probably the best example. We started work on it as an outgrowth of the Jesse Jackson for President campaign. I worked on his campaign in 2000, I guess 1984 and 1988, as many of you probably did in this room. And one of the platforms was really same-day voter registration. It was a major mantra that we pushed as the 84 campaign. The 88 convention adopted it as a part of its platform for the first time. I remember distinctly going on the floor of the convention in Atlanta, and as the convention was applauding his speech, we got pledge cards, much like Eleanor did tonight, and we got 133 members of Congress to sign on as co-sponsors on the floor of the Democratic Convention in Atlanta, Georgia. And that was no easy feat, but we organized that knowing that that was going to be one of the planks. And so there was a whole movement of members of Congress who were for same-day registration, but then there was a whole number of other good government groups who were just for motor voter, which is tying registration to the Department of Vehicle Registration. The problem that we had with it was that 92% of the people who had driver's license, but not there was not enough people who had driver's license who were representative of the African American and the low-income community and the people of color community. And if we only relied on motor voter, there were people who got who were going to be left out. So we pushed a postcard registration, which was at the time in 26 states, it was illegal to register people to vote with a postcard. People were being purged every year because they didn't vote in the previous election. And same-day registration was actually an option in the motor voter bill. It actually ended up being something that we kept in the bill up until the last few days before it finally passed. But the people who supported same-day registration only as the only vehicle for ensuring that people's right to vote were protected were always at odds with the people who only wanted motor voter. And we fought in that coalition, and we were divided as a coalition for 6 years. And I was very active in, of course, same-day registration, but it wasn't until I really worked with John Congress as his chief of staff in the 6th year of my working on it, only after the election of President Clinton, because again, we had worked on this for years, did it actually come into light. And the key point to remember is this: we had several votes to pass that bill. It became the National Voter Registration Act, now known as Motor Voter. It was bipartisan. In fact, Newt Gingrich was one of the co-sponsors at one time before he got off the bill, because we added agency-based registration and welfare agencies to the bill. But there were Republicans who were on it, not a whole lot, but enough of them. But we passed it in the House and Senate with 59 votes in the Senate 3 times. It was, we lost the vote twice. And even after the 3rd vote, when we got the filibuster and beat it with 61 votes, President Bush, #1, vetoed it on July 4th, the nation's birthday, in 1992. And so this 6-year effort with the divided coalition and all the dynamics of what was going on in our country with the loss of people's rights across the country took really an effort of 2 coalitions coming together and becoming as one. And I see these 2 coalitions as mirroring the people who want voting rights for the District of Columbia and the people who really want statehood for the District of Columbia. And so I can talk about it more, but I thought that was a pretty good example.
Well, that's great. I want to go to Jesselyn and then to Ann and sort of round out this discussion of external activities and then move on to the internal thing.
Yeah, I'm here because first of all, I want to say the first panel was wonderful, and I think it really laid a really good groundwork, foundation for our continuing conversation about influencing Congress and making change. And again, a lot of the points that they make, I want to reiterate. One that Greg just made, it's a long haul. This is a long haul, so please don't get discouraged. I'm here because I worked very closely while I was with the ACLU the first time around when I went up to the Hill and worked for House Judiciary on the crack cocaine disparity. And I was the lead counsel for the House Judiciary Committee on that crack cocaine disparity when we finally, after 25 years, were able to reduce the 100-to-1 disparity to 18-to-1. That was a long haul, but ultimately it wasn't everything we wanted. We wanted to eliminate the disparity, but at some point we had to realize that these were people's lives, literally, that were in our hands. Every day that we did not come to some resolution, some compromise on this bill, people were continuing to go to prison for 10, 15, 20 years at a time, and there was no turning back from that. So I think the first panel made a lot of great points about this is a long haul, don't get discouraged. I think you have to be a little bit crazy to do this work. I really think you have to be a little crazy because you have to be able to block out the haters, the naysayers that say it won't happen, you can't do it, this isn't the right time, this isn't the right people, these aren't the right coalition, don't have the right supporters. You have to block those voices out and be willing to move forward with your goal of DC statehood. And I think DC statehood has a lot of similarities to actually the crack cocaine movement and the coalitions that were built in the crack cocaine movement. And again, because it is a long haul, because you do have people that say you won't be able to do it, There are other kind of voices and approaches to, for example, providing citizens in DC with a vote. But if statehood is the right way to do it, then statehood is the right way to do it, and you have to move forward with statehood. One of the other things I want to mention in terms of how to make it happen in terms of Capitol Hill and grab their attention, that I think hasn't been talked a lot about tonight, is media. We really did have and I'm not talking about paid media because we didn't have a lot of money. We did a few. I'm not even going to say paid media types of things, but we did like kind of posters and we developed poster children for the crack cocaine campaign, but we did not do a lot of paid media. We really went out with our communications teams to get op-eds put in papers, to get editorials. I think we probably, in the top 5 papers, at some point in the past 5 or 6 years, we've had an editorial that supported reform of the crack cocaine law. And I think that's very important in terms of getting the attention of members of Congress, and even particularly if you want to go to papers in targeted districts of people that are very important decision makers on the Hill, do that also.